I have a hot take on the root cause, chronic condition, um, functional medicine, integrative medicine world that I think is going to ruffle some feathers, but you need to understand this part because although a lot of these practitioners, and you might be one of them, a lot of these holistic health practitioners know this. I think we like to have this is our lane, this is what I do, and systematize everything so much that we stop looking at the bigger picture. And one of the things that I have noticed in just like my research and in going to school for natural medicine, watching all of these people with chronic conditions try all of these different things. One thing I think that everybody is missing that Eastern medicine does really well at that gets looked over once we cross into it's like there's kind of this like cherry picking of ideas from the Western perspective of like a functional medicine doctor where we're going to like run all these labs or an integrative medicine doctor who's like, hey, we're looking at, a little bit more of a holistic view. We're looking at lifestyle, things like that. But Eastern medicine really looks at you as a whole human being. We're looking at not just what's going on physically, right? Your symptoms that you're experiencing, which is probably why you're at the doctor. But we're also looking at what's going on with your mental state. What are some of these patterns of thoughts that you're constantly having and feelings that are associated with it? So we're looking at the mental state. We're looking at the emotional state. We're also looking at your upbringing, like what type of environment did you grow up in, your parentage. All of those things are being considered, not just the foods you eat. We're not, and I think, again, I think the supplementation industry is way oversaturated. It's something that I love about homeopathy is it really isn't forever. You're not supposed to take something every day forever. Like if you need a pick me up, if you're experiencing a lot of depression, then the answer is not to get hooked on St. John's wort to like fix everything. And so then people go looking for this idea of a root cause. There's one thing that's growing the tree of all these other problems, right? That's growing all these branches. And there's got to be this one thing. That's not it. Nothing works in isolation in your body. Nothing. Not one single process. Is it like this one thing only happens? Because again, you have to understand and look at your body in a deeper perspective, okay? So when we look at hormones, a lot of people are actually addicted to stress hormones. They like feeling stressed. I know you don't think you do, but you do. You like the feeling that it gives you. It's why people fucking procrastinate. And procrastinators, I know, don't like to hear that. They're like, I work great under pressure. No, you realize that you need that amount of stress or pressure. You like feeling that fight or flight response, which forces action rather than the action being something that's voluntary. Instead, you're going to fight for your life for it because it gives you a thrill. You'll like it. It feels good. It's the same reason why we stay in relationships that might be abusive, because that push and that pull, the hormones that are created make us feel good. The feelings that we feel that then trigger things in our brain and processes in our brain to say, hey, start to dump some of this neurotransmitter, start to pump out some of these hormones, start to do some of these processes. Okay, we're experiencing a little bit of fight or flight. We should upregulate this and downregulate that. And it becomes so normal that your baseline of what you think is regulated is not actually regulated. And a lot of times regulated feels boring. And a lot of times people feel agitated when they are actually hitting some of those regulated states. They immediately want to pull out of it because boredom actually feels threatening. They don't know how to be still. And the reality is nothing works in isolation. So you aren't just experiencing depression. You're experiencing a physiological response. Do you ever notice that certain things are associated with certain physical responses from the body? So again, like let's use depression for an example. Typically the shoulders will actually start to round. A lot of people will talk about feeling a heaviness or an ache in their chest, pain through their shoulders, lethargy, they're experiencing brain fog, all of the things. Those are physical things. Well, they're experiencing a mental issue, a mental symptom. Now, what could be the cause of some of this depression? For some people, and that's the thing, is you can't just think of it like, well, I'll just cure my depression. Well, what's triggering this feeling of depression? Is it physical? Is it emotional? Or is it something like this? Would it be something that you are in the wrong job, that your soul is fighting against? It no longer feels aligned with the highest path. It doesn't feel like growth for you anymore. It doesn't feel like expansion. What maybe once excited you or was something that you're like, this works for right now because of this season of life. You're no longer in that season of life, but now you become so dependent on the income, or it's so convenient, or it's hard to find a job in your field, or whatever it is. So now you're on this path that you don't want to be on, that your soul or your spirit is fighting against. So then you feel like you don't want to get up in the morning because you don't want to go to work. It feels like you come home and all you can do is dissociate because you're so taxed from having to be at a job for 8 hours that your soul has been like, I'm out of here. This is not for me. I need you to take action, but you haven't taken the action. And so there's energy and momentum that is dying to get out. There's this push and pull from your body that's saying, come on, let's make some change. And you don't. For whatever reason, you don't. Either you feel like you can't, whatever is justifying you to stay. But then because of that, it has an emotional effect. And because of that, it has a physical effect. So understanding that I don't think there's a root cause to anything. Not one thing has one specific moment in time or one specific marker in your body or one specific thing. This is a collective experience. You are experiencing something as a physical person, as an emotional person, as an energetic being, as a spirit, and that is all part of the experience. There are many different facets to this. And so when you're getting into kind of picking some of these practitioners, I think, and if this is you and you're a practitioner, understand that helping somebody heal is not always getting to this one thing. It's asking the questions. It's staying a little longer than, the allotted 7-minute time slot, or it's doing things that make people feel seen and heard. It's why I started incorporating other elements of like group sessions and different things like that into my business. So that way I had maybe more time to spend with people. Because sometimes people come in for an hour session and honestly, they want to talk for the hour about what's going on. And I was like, okay, well, we need to actually get to like, whether we're doing a spinal energetic session or an energy healing session or whatever we're doing. I'm like, we can't just talk about things. We need to feel things. We need to shift things. Talking about them repeats the cycle. We need to stop repeating the cycle. We need to change the information that's coming into the system and make adjustments. And so whether you're somebody who is maybe working with a practitioner or you are a practitioner, I think it's important to understand when you are formulating a method or when you are creating a system or a protocol or whatever it is, or maybe you're on the receiving end of that, is that you need to understand that this is a whole human being. And while your protocol might help them physically at first, sometimes what happens is that physical expression of something, when it's supported by other things, supplementation, pharmaceuticals, meditation, working out, whatever it is, changing your nutrition, that desire still goes somewhere, even if you've shifted the physical state. So let's use that example again of being in a job that your soul is telling you is not good for you anymore. So say you're like, okay, well, I started doing, again, St. John's wort, and that really helped alleviate my depression. But I still feel aimless. So maybe this sense of depression lifts, but now you have no creativity. You're like, I feel really uninspired. Like I'm going to work and I don't necessarily feel depressed, but I don't have like a zest for life. I'm just bebopping along. Well, that doesn't feel like quality life either. And so the element that is maybe kickstarting some of this is not necessarily just changing the job, right? It's not the job itself. It's actually feeling fulfilled. So is that technically a root cause? I would say no. Because again, it might feel better with some type of support. But it's like, okay, well, if I think about that as a full experience, if it's now manifesting as something else that has kind of some of these undertones of depression or melancholy or, whatever emotional expression you're having, did that really solve the problem? And I think that's something that's really unique about, again, I think in the not only the field that I'm in, but the way that I approach things or do things or whatever, is that when people come in, I don't just ask them about their physical symptoms. I'm not just asking them if they're having digestion issues, sleep issues. What's funny is a lot of times they're actually coming in and telling me all of the emotional stuff first. They're telling me like about their jobs, their relationships, all this stuff. And then I'm like, okay, well, how's digestion? Like, are you sleeping well? Have you noticed anything, any like physical stuff? Not because people don't notice the physical things, but you're never escaping what's going on in your mind. You are always with your mind. And so most of the time, what people are experiencing is when the physical symptom finally shows up, the mind, the energy, the spirit, like that's all been whispering and now screaming for a while. And so the physical symptom now makes itself apparent. Because if you'll notice, where it's very true, where your attention goes, energy flows. So if you're noticing constantly that, this is going on with your ankle or your wrist or your shoulder or whatever, or your digestion. But if you really start to pull back from constantly that being a focus, you'll notice that it's doesn't show up as much. It might be there, here or there, but it's not all day, every day anymore because your awareness isn't there all day, every day. And so in that same way of your mind, if you're not thinking those same thoughts all day, every day, your physiology is not expressing in the same way all day, every day. So I would actually argue that I think more than anything, if you're thinking about a root cause, it's probably dwindles down more to a soul's expression or a soul experience here on this life. Is that navigating what your soul is being and spirit is being pulled towards or pulled away from, and being able to listen to your intuition and follow those things. So in this sense of like trying to really dig to the root cause, I think so many times it's like there's only a root cause if it fits your exact protocol. And that's the same thing that Western medicine does. And so sometimes, we have all these alternatives and you end up in the same cycle or the same trap, like functional medicine will call it adrenal fatigue. Biohackers call it, mitochondrial dysfunction. Like they're all going to call it something different. But the reality is maybe your vitality or your chi is low. You're not doing things to increase your prana, your chi, your life force energy. So you have low life force energy. Okay, there's no supplement for that. But there's activities that you can do. So yoga is often considered like a something to increase your life force energy. Things that I always say, stuff that typically gives you energy requires a little bit more effort up front. And then the feel good is on the back. It's like a reverse hangover. With alcohol, like the feel good is first and the like shitty part is on the back. This is like a reverse. Like working out is that way. Breath work is that way. Meditation is that way. Like all of those things that actually make you feel better and actually bring you into more elevated states of consciousness typically require a little bit more effort and devotion and dedication. And so they're not easy, which is why a lot of people don't experience them. So when we're talking about trying to get to the root cause of this and that, like, have you asked like what's going on in your soul lately? Have you asked like, really, what's my purpose? What am I doing here? Do I feel like my soul is expanding? And am I doing things that make me feel creative and inspired and motivated on a daily basis? Am I doing things to take care of my body? Am I drinking water that is mineralized, that maybe you're vortexing your water so it has more oxygen? Maybe you're doing hydrogenated water. Like, are you doing things to support your overall physical health and support your emotional health? And it seems like a lot of work, but it's not. It really isn't, especially if you add one small thing at a time. So like, I feel like my work really, and a lot of people I have noticed, it kind of starts with their physical body because it's the most dense. And it's what you know the most. It's why you go to the doctor when you're experiencing a physical symptom. It's like, oh, there's proof. Like it's not just in my mind. I'm not just feeling it. Like I am actually experiencing it in my body. So one of the ways to start moving energy and increasing your prana or increasing your life force is actually movement. And it's not movement that feels like pounding you into the ground, which I've nothing wrong with, like hard classes, whether they be HIIT classes or like CrossFit or running marathons. I think those all have their place, but it's building a consistent routine of movement, whether that be showing up for Pilates, for yoga, for strength training, for whatever it is. But it's consistently moving your body, even if it's a little bit every day. And somebody asked me the other day, I was finishing up a yoga class at a place where I used to teach. I no longer teach anymore. And they were like, "Ah, I haven't seen you so long. How are things?" And, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, "I was watching you in class. Like, how often do you practice? Are you still practicing a lot?" And I was like, which is funny because a lot of people don't realize, like, a full blown, like, yoga class. I've always, my routine has been 1 or 2 a week of a class, like traditional class. So it's funny because I've led trainings, YTTs, other things of that nature. And I still don't feel like I need to do a full hour yoga practice 5, 6 days a week. But I do practice every day. I stretch and mindful breathe with intention every single day. Now, I don't do it, again, a full practice. This might be just a few sun A's. It might be more of like a yin style practice. So sometimes I'll work out and I'll keep my headphones in and I actually turn on more of like relaxing music, things like that, mostly to drown out the gym noise. And I'll stay in postures 3 to 5 minutes and experience and sit with sensation. And I was like, I might not do that very long. I might only do kind of a forward fold, stand all the way up, like mountain pose, reach your arms up, hands down by my side. Again, inhale, reach your arms all the way up, forward fold, maybe some like folded twist, maybe like a malasana squat, something like that, stand all the way up. But I'm doing it every single day. I'm mindful moving and breathing to connect to my body every single day. So it doesn't, I've talked about this on so many episodes. I meditate every single day. And I have for almost, I think I'm at about 1,900 days in a row. I don't know how long that is. I think it's almost like 5 years off the top of my head. But before that, I had also been on a streak. So I have technically meditated for probably close to somewhere to like 2,500 days, almost in a row. We got like 2 breaks in there, which was really annoying when I realized I forgot to meditate that day. I was like, oh no. And I was like, it's not about that. I was like, it's about consistency, and you've been consistently showing up. So just get back on. And I only guarantee myself a 5-minute meditation every day. Every day. Some days it's 10 minutes. Some days it's 20 or 30. Some days when I feel really generous with myself and I have the time, I'll sit for an hour. But I'm in a season of life where it was so important to me to have that 5 minutes of slow down and connection before the day started. And it starts with those small things. So when you're talking about getting to a root cause, it's not just this one giant thing. It's all these little things that either suck life force energy or give life force energy. And that can be in so many different ways. But, in when I say like start something that you can stick with consistently. So movement every day might not be a workout every day, but if you're committed to movement every day, it might be a walk. And then the next day it's yoga. And then the next day it's weight training. And then the next day it's, maybe just a walk around the block with your dog. It's not far. Maybe it's just a few moments of stretching. The next day you're weight training. So it's the intent is way more important than the actual activity that you're doing. But all of these little things add up, and all of these little things connect to the nervous system. They connect or communicate to the electromagnetic field around your body and change the frequency of your body. And so sometimes when you're trying to, siphon through and identify, do I have Lyme? Do I have mold? Do I have mast cell activation? Do I have POTS? Do I have dysautonomia? Do I have every autoimmune disorder under the sun? And now there's like literally so many. It's like, does that help you? Does it help? And sometimes it does. You're like, okay, it gives me an awareness of like things that I can do to help myself, or it puts me on a path where I can find supplementation, or again, things that help me reduce my symptoms. But what prompted some of this expression in the first place? And I think that's why getting deeper than just supplementing, getting deeper than just talking about stuff, talk therapy, I think is going to be actually the next wave of healing. And I think this is where we'll see, like, again, we're kind of removing the idea of like needing to get to the root cause and instead supporting you as a whole human, making sure that we're not just giving you St. John's wort and be like, be on it for the rest of your life, hope for the best. But it's like, hey, we're going to be together, kind of like a life coach type of thing, but also with people who are holistic practitioners who can help you understand what's going on physically and things like that, and that have training on some of these things that I think you do need a lot more background rather than just show up and wing it. But where you can be like, okay, for the first, 2 months, we're addressing like physical stuff. For the next couple of months, we're adding on to that. We're addressing mental things. We're doing NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. We're doing, different modalities that help you address what's going on in your mind. Okay, we're going to do some somatic work. We're doing spinal energetics. Maybe we're doing ecstatic dance. Maybe we're doing, what is it? I'm thinking emotional freedom technique. That's not what I'm thinking, but I feel like that could qualify for that too. Tapping, different things like that. I think we'll start to see this like pullback of root cause healing. And we'll start to see a lot more like deeper understanding and hopefully a lot more of collaboration. I think that's kind of the future of medicine, is having, one of my clients came in and said this, and I love this. Actually, I've had 2 people say this to me. So it's funny because I was like, oh, I never really thought of it like that. But she's like, yeah, you're part of my like healing team. And I was like, your healing team? She was like, yeah, I go to this person for this. I go to this person for this. She's like, I wish you all could just like talk. And I actually think that's going to be kind of the future of medicine, is that I think in a lot of extreme cases, you have all these doctors who communicate and are on your team, right? That's your medical team. But in the holistic world, it has a tendency to not be that way. There's a lot less collaboration of like, this person's a gut specialist. This person, works primarily with the nervous system. This person is a physical therapist. This person, this person is an energy healer. So like, instead of, it's like having somebody for all these different elements and it really being this collaborative support system for you to be able to process all of these different parts of you. Instead of trying to get to the one thing that you think that it is, because it's never one thing, it's everybody working together. The future is collaborative and it is connective and it is working together. And I think it will start to dissolve this idea of finding that one thing, because instead of feeling like you need to isolate it, which is very different than communities that feel supported. Isolation means separate. Once I isolate it from this other thing, then it's separate from the parts of me that are good, and now I've isolated the bad. And instead being like, all parts of me are welcome, and this symptom, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is expressing itself because there is something going on in my field. There is something going on at one of the layers at which I experience life, mental, emotional, physical, whatever it is, that is no longer congruent with the life that I want to live. I'm no longer experiencing resonance, which is why my body is expressing these things, is so that I can notice contrast and move towards more resonance. So a lot of times when my clients come in, I'm like, move towards the things that make you feel inspired, that light you up, that you feel motivated and welcomed and really seen in spaces. I was like, if you get in friend groups and notice that you feel like you're always the listener, that you might say 1 or 2 things and then the person is like, basically like, so back to me and like what I want to talk about. You're like, okay, this might not be the place for me for the most expansion. Like you can enjoy those people and still recognize they might not be for your soul's growth anymore. They served a purpose. Everybody has a season, and that might be your season. And so when we start to do this and we start to look at ourselves as a whole human, and we start to address some of these things that are, and stop looking at them in isolation, we really start to understand how this network and this web and this kind of tapestry of who we are is woven together. So it's like while you're doing St. John's wort for depression, you might also start journaling on, what would, if I could do anything, what would I do? If there were no barriers to entry, if I had the degree, if I had the money, if I had whatever, and I could do anything for work, what would I do? And then you might journal on like, why do I feel that I can't do this in my life? Why have I chosen the road that I have? What part of me felt safer doing this than the other thing? And so you kind of start to get into those things. And then maybe while you're taking St. John's wort and doing some journaling here or there, maybe you see a healer. Maybe you see a somatic therapist. And you start to notice, okay, well, where is it in my body? Where are do I have some meridians that aren't flowing properly? Do I have some chakras that are off? Do I have, that are imbalanced in their energy flow? Do I have tension along my spine where I'm holding patterns of tension in my nervous system? Okay, let me do some of this work. So it starts to be something where you're supported wholly rather than separately. And I think those types of things are going to start cropping up more and more and more as we start to enter really this new age of healing. So I'm really curious because I know, like, again, root cause is a big buzzword right now. And I don't feel like this is it. I feel like it's gimmicky. I feel like it's a way, and I'm guilty of using it. And I recognize I was like, this isn't getting necessarily to the root cause. It's helping what I do, in nervous system regulation and healing work. It's helping people process things in their subconscious that's held in their nervous system, that's communicating patterns of tension, that's creating dis-ease and dissonance in the body. And so a lot of times, because it works with the innate intelligence of the body, things are happening physically. Like when we work on something in the sacrum, let's say there's some tension in the sacrum, and we do a spinal energetic session, all of a sudden, because that's associated with the sacral chakra, all of a sudden a person who never, for whatever reason, stress or other things going on, hasn't had their period, and they're young enough to still be ovulating, and a day later they get their period, that tells me that the innate intelligence of the body is recalibrating. This new information is changing the physiological expression. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that as we move. And I would be really curious. I'm just curious, like, do you feel like there is true root cause healing? Do you feel like this is kind of the future? If you're a practitioner, are you looking for collaboration and it's hard? Like, I'd really love to hear from you guys and kind of gauge what your thoughts are on some of this, because I feel like this is a topic that can really like trigger some people of like, there's always something like, no, this is always the start, blah, blah, blah. And I've just seen with studying, the energetics, the emotionality, the physical. And when you start to look at all of them, you're like, oh, they're related, like physical, mental, and emotional. And I would always say spiritual are all interrelated and communicate with one another and affect one another. And I just don't think root cause healing is ever true. I think it's a way to make you feel like I can help you because there's one thing. And once we identify it, then your world is going to change. But I think your world changes when you start noticing and healing and supporting all parts of you rather than separation. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know on Instagram. Go ahead and find me at Dr. Shalane Carter and let me know what you thought of this episode. Again, I'd love to hear your 2 cents. So let me know. But if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. It drops every single Tuesday. And if you're a practitioner and you haven't already taken the quiz to find out which chakras are superpower in business, I think it will really change the way that you do business. And I've got some other really fun, I think they're fun, business development things coming up for healers and holistic practitioners that is up my sleeve. So please come find me, get in my DMs. I love to chit chat over there on Instagram. You can also follow me on TikTok, a little more unhinged, a little more fun, if you will. But until next time, cheers, everybody.